Okay, good. So Aaron's getting in. Well, welcome everyone to our second meeting of our VB STEM Trifecta Cybersecurity preparation, I guess is what we call it. And you'll notice this is not my office. As I was mentioning to Teresa, we were evacuated from campus today due to an unspecified threat, so I am at the house. For that reason, if you hear a cat run through in the background or if you hear a cat meowing, it's just our Persians deciding that they want attention. I'm not going to leave on the video because it wastes resources in terms of my bandwidth, and you really don't care whether or not you see me. It's more important that you can see my desktop. Please do be aware that I am going to be a little bit hamstrung today because instead of having my normal 2 monitors, one of which is a huge monitor. Okay, Aaron, I'll get you those at the end of the meeting if that's okay. Let me pause. But the pause this real quick, and actually I will repeat some of that. And what is today, I want to go over some of the different chapter 1 and chapter 2. Now, hopefully you were able to jump into my
Kelly, we're having a hard time hearing you, or at least I am. It's like you're buffering. It's a little bit pokey.
Okay, it may be my internet connection. So let me, not a whole lot I can do about that. Okay, hold on just a second. If I stop sharing, is it better?
Yeah. But I think it's beneficial to see what you have.
I'm gonna have to share, and it may just be my internet. I do live, it's fairly slow. I'll try to speak slowly.
I know you're recording. I know you're recording all of this. Will it record it without the buffering?
It should.
Okay.
It should. The playlist that we have here, obviously the Networking Essentials playlist, which will be, right now it's got chapters 1 and 2, and we'll have the rest of the chapters as we go through. And then the other playlist to be aware of is the VB training. And this is where I'm posting the different videos that I give you as part of this course. So the initial meeting that we had is right here, and I sent that link out. These are previous meetings. If you would want to review anything we did last year, you could do that too. So I'm just leaving them all in one item or one playlist. I will label the date on these, so I'll go back and change this to put the date, and I will have today's date as part of our meeting. So be aware that that is still there for you and will be available.
And by the way, guys, I'm also, as we go through each of these, I'm posting these on our VB STEM Trifecta site as well under your Cyber Mentor section. So if you go down to the high school mentors, the cyber mentors at the bottom, you'll see what the first one was, the date it was, and what was covered. So when we finish this one and it's posted, I'll do the same thing. And I have the information on how to follow Kelly's YouTube channel as well.
Okay, excellent. That's really good. One of the things I do is I do post, I'm teaching multiple Cisco courses, and I usually post lectures of different chapters all the time with different classes. So if you get a chance, you can always go through and look at other lectures on other topics. One thing I want to make you aware of is I did go in and assign dates to the quizzes and when they are due. So you'll see that chapter 1 and chapter 2 quizzes are due in about 2 days. Now, am I going to fail you if you don't have them done by 2 days from now? No, I'm not, obviously. But I want to give you some dates to shoot for. As today's class started, you should have already read chapters 1 and chapters 2. We're going to talk about any questions you may have on those chapters, and hopefully it'll prepare you to take the chapter 1 and chapter 2 quiz. Those quizzes can be completed as many times as you want. You can redo them. It actually shows you what you missed. We're using them completely for you to learn the materials. We're not doing this as a, you will pass or fail this course. This is, I want you to learn the material. So be aware that all the quizzes have dates associated with them. You also see that under my term exam, and I put that is due on November 19th. Again, that's not a set in stone day. It's just a day I'd like to have you get it done if you could. That gives you 7 days after completing Chapter 5. I've also put in days, so I give you some time to read, but I at least give you a frame labs I'm going to give you to play in on our VE competitions.stanley.edu system. So that is a system that will be available for you. Are there any questions on these due dates or assignments? I'm going to pull the chat up here. I know many of you don't have the ability to actually use a microphone yet. Any questions? Students freaking out at this point, mentors, going, oh, you mean there's actually work involved with this? Okay, good. Again, remember, I'm not going to pass or fail you in this course. I just want you to make sure you have materials to get ready for the contest and don't feel like you're being just left out in the cold. I will tell you this, if you're taking networking at your local school, this course is a very good additional item to help you as you prepare for Network Plus. It's really many parts of this particular, I won't say module, but this course, Networking Essentials, many parts of it have been ripped directly from the Introduction to Network Cisco CCNA 1 course. So you're getting, if you don't have the CCNA courses at your local school, you are getting some of the same materials that are in that first Introduction to Networks course. And Lori's saying having trouble hearing us. I'm trying my best, Lori. My internet's only 11 megabits per second, so it may be a little bit in and out, and I apologize.
And Kelly was saying too that there won't be the trouble buffering on the recording too. So if you find that you're missing something that we go over, we can always go back and look at the recording later.
Yeah. And if there happens to be an issue with the buffering, I'll do another meeting next week and we can do it from my office. This is the only time I can ever remember being actually evacuated from our campus. So strange times indeed. It's important that when we think about networks, that we think about what we need in a network and what makes up a network. And one of the things I always teach my students is that you need something to share. You need, and I know we talked a little bit about this last time, but you've got to have something that needs to be shared among multiple users, a printer, file storage, a web page, something that has to be shared. You then need that media or medium, which is, some type of cable or possibly RF, or microwave or something that you can send your signals across. And then last but not least, you have to have a common language, which we call protocols or a protocol. And that's a common language. If one computer is speaking German and one computer is speaking English, they would never understand each other. So we're going to talk about a common language, and for us, it's going to be TCP/IP, and it comes in 2 flavors, version 4, which you're most familiar with, and version 6, which you probably have very little experience with it at all, because even though it's not new, it's just not something that we use a great deal inside of our computers today. Now, the amazing thing is what most people don't realize, if I do CMD and actually do an IP config, and this is one of the commands you're going to need to learn. I can scroll up and show you my IP address. I got to find it. Actually, it's on my wireless. It's a VMware adapter. I've got so many different ones. Here's my wireless. Okay, so my IP address right now is 192.168.254.86. But you will notice also that I've got an IPv6, what's called a linked local address. That's because by default, what most people don't realize, and it's actually a very, very big security hole in some. Look at my Wi-Fi because it's a little, I'm on the Wi-Fi adapter, not the network interface card. But you'll see that we actually have IPv6 as a protocol turned on. So it's enabled, IPv4 and IPv6. So even though we don't right now use IPv6 for most of our communications, it is there and it's running in the background. And what hackers have learned is they've learned that in the right circumstances, they can use IPv6 unbeknownst to users because those users don't even know that it's turned on. But that's a protocol. It's a language. It's a way for two devices or hosts to speak to one another. Did any of you, quick poll, did any students actually read Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 or watch the video? More likely to watch the video. I see no response. Okay. Well, if you do watch the video, a lot of what I'm going to mention is already in that video, but we look at different types of networks. We look at small networks, which are called sometimes SOHOs, small office, home office. We talk about home networks, which is kind of funny. We talk about small networks in the home, but there are 20 plus devices in my house that have IP addresses on them. So it's, you know, that's bigger than some offices, which is kind of amazing. You've got medium to large offices. Those are, 200 to 300 computers, maybe up to 1,000. And then you've got what are called wide area networks. So when we talk about networks, we have a couple different types. We have what we like to call a LAN, which is a local area network. Another way to think about this is it is a limited area network. We have MANs, which is another, or CAN. Let's go with CAN first. That's a campus area network. We have MANs, which are a little bit different, and the term not great really used in a large amount in networking, but it's a metropolitan area network, so within a single city. So let's say you had 3 or 4 sites inside of Norfolk. You had two or three buildings. You could technically say that that would be a metropolitan area network. It's not city network. That's what happens when I try to talk and type. And then we have WANs, which is best known as the internet, so wide area networks. All right. And these are different types of networks that we can have. There's one other one that I really like to talk about because it's kind of a cool one. It's called personal area networks. If you've got a smartwatch, if you've got any type of Bluetooth device, let's say you hook your phone to a Bluetooth speaker. You created a personal area network, a small network that is within a limited space. If you use GPSs when you run, or for instance, I mentioned when I was up there talking to your mentors, I have had a GPS on my bicycle that connected to my phone and would then relay my position to a website that my wife could check as I was riding. So those are what are called personal area networks. And they're becoming more and more common, but they're also, I mean, you think about the security ramifications of, imagine a pacemaker that connects to someone's phone and relays information back to their doctor. Think about how secure that needs to be, especially in many of those devices. They can actually change the information or the speed of the pacemaker. There's been a proven hack on a wireless insulin pump that has basically, they've shown that they can make it misread the information and give too much insulin to a patient using one of those wireless insulin pumps. So there's some serious ramifications for security as we start building more and more personal area networks. Any questions on those? No questions. Okay. I'm going to jump forward. By the way, I will say I was one of the dumb people that bought a Google Glass, and it was a complete flop. It's one of my few technology things that were a flop. I bought it for school because I thought it was cool, but that was a flop. I think we'll get there eventually. Smart homes, I've got a Nest thermostat sitting right over there on the desk I need to install. We've got Netflix streams to everything that you can imagine. So we've got networks everywhere, and we've got it all of what exactly is data. And there's PII. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but PII is personal identifiable information. So that's information you don't want people to get a hold of. There's also data that's called volunteer data, and that's data that you share on purpose, what you put on Facebook, what you put on Instagram, what you put on whatever your social media item of choice. Inferred data is looking at your credit score, or possibly, do you ever wonder how you get a coupon for a certain type of dog food? Well, what has happened is they've looked at your shopping habits and decided that typically you buy this type of dog food, and you would use that coupon, so you get that. Then there's observed data, and that's the actions such as location using cell phones, and it can actually pop up and say, hey, we know that you like Warhammer 40K, so there's a Warhammer 40K store nearby and there's a tournament next week. Those types of things can pop up. I've been rewatching the original Blade Runner in preparation for watching the new Blade Runner, and one of the things that really is kind of standing out is the idea of these targeted advertisements to people when they walk by, which I think is something that we're going to unfortunately see as we continue. I do want to tell you something very important though. Computers are one of the dumbest things you will ever work on. They are binary. They can understand ones and zeros only. So a computer is either on or off in terms of the position called a bit. And the binary digit or a bit is the smallest unit that a computer can work with. We're going to talk later on as we look at IP addresses about an octet. And an octet is a set of 8 bits. And those bits are used to represent your address in your IP address. So if you've got the number 9 in your, in this case is in ASCII, if you put the number 9 and type it into a computer, this is actually how the computer understands it. It has an ASCII representation. So if you put in K, I'll try to put it in. Okay, A, translate, and that's what the ASCII bit is for. Oops. F, that's ASCII. So you can go through and see what the ASCII representation is. Big thing is computers are dumb, and a lot of time media they're going to use. That was the second item I told you needed, something to share. Well, the data is what we're sharing. The media is what we send our information over, and that can be electrical signals going across copper cabling. It can be pulses of light going across fiber optic cables, or it can be our radio waves doing items such as 802.11, microwave, satellite communications, any of those different types of media or medium. Now, you are having trouble hearing me. You're having trouble hearing me because I have a very slow internet connection at my house. And it's 11 megabits per second, which is slow, unfortunately. The megabit per second, that's a million bits per second. Okay, so 11 megabits per second would be 11 million bits per second. That is still very, very slow this day and age in the world of, quote, high-speed internet. The bits per second is how we look at bandwidth. bandwidth? Well, bandwidth is the maximum amount of data or the maximum number of bits that can be carried across a media or medium. The best way to think about this is imagine a fire hose, okay? If you've got a 2-inch fire hose, so they bring a fire truck out, they hook up a fire hose. The fire hose has the capacity to hold 2 inches worth of water in that pipe or in that hose. So the bandwidth is 2 inches, the entire diameter of that particular hose. The throughput, so this concept of throughput, is the amount of water going through that fire hose. Just because the fire hose is 2 inches in diameter doesn't mean they're going to turn it wide open and send all that water through it. Depends on what they're doing. Of course, yes, if they're trying to put a fire out, they're going to turn it wide open. If they're just testing the fire hydrant, they probably will not turn it wide open, and they'll only run a certain amount of throughput through the hose. So think about cables, networking cables, as having a bandwidth, a theoretical maximum number of bits that can travel through it. Throughput is the amount of information actually going through that particular media or medium. Now, there's another concept they talk about a little bit in here. We don't talk about a great deal, but it's called good put. Good put is the amount of data minus all of our control data that is needed when you send something across a line. So we really got the concept of bandwidth, which is max amount of data a media or medium can carry. Throughput, and that is the amount of data at a given time crossing a media or medium. And then you've got good put, which they don't talk really about in the chapter, but I'll mention to you anyway. And that's the data minus any control information. Because what you're going to learn is that not every bit of information that goes across a media or medium is actually data. Some of it is retransmission, some of it's timing, sequencing, some of it's hello packets saying, hey, I'm here, are you still there? Those types of things, which are not actually moving any data. Are there any questions about those three items, bandwidth, throughput, and good put? And has your ability to hear me improved any?
I can hear you just fine. It's the buffering is still there every so often, but for the most part, you seem to be coming through okay.
Okay, good. And no questions, you're cutting out more, but we can get the gist. Okay, good. I do apologize, folks. If I could be on campus, I would definitely be there. So. I'm going to kind of move past this client server information because I think you probably understand what a client and a server is. I will mention this. Many of you are sitting here going, I thought I signed up for a cybersecurity competition. You did. But the important thing to remember is that the role of a security operations and cybersecurity analyst requires that you have a wide breadth of knowledge. You need to understand everything from physical cabling to client-server interaction. The reason being, imagine this. One of the things we'll talk about in a second is fiber is very hard to tap. It's very hard to remove information off of a piece of fiber without someone knowing about it. Unshielded twisted pair, however, the cables we use most often, you can actually lay an unshielded twisted pair cable into a special device and pull every single bit of information coming off of that cable. So if you don't understand something as simple as the media or medium, you may have holes in your security that you don't even know about. So be aware, we've got to kind of fill in the background here. And the mentors, please feel free to let me know if this is all information your students already know that they have completed, they're doing these classes already, and if so, we'll accelerate and go forward to Linux. But it is important that you have these basic concepts. Now, once we get into the cybersecurity competition, one of the things you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at both clients and servers and trying to pull information off of them. Now, one of the things that servers do is they provide services. They provide files or a web server. Which, by the way, folks, a web server is nothing more than a specialized file server. So don't think there's some kind of something special. They're just a glorified file server. Email servers been all over the news in the past couple of years about how security on email servers. But one of the things that hackers learn is they learn that you need to be able to compromise the clients, even though the clients don't hand out, services, because those clients can then be used to escalate and get access to servers. Or let's imagine that this file server is trusted by this email server, and you want to get into this email server. Well, if I'm a hacker, I'm going to find which one of these is the easiest to crack, and let's say it's this file server. I could crack this file server, and then the email server, because it trusts the file server, suddenly becomes vulnerable, even though the email server did not actually have a vulnerability on it. Now, one of the things I always teach people is jail is bad. Let's repeat that all together. Jail is bad. You're learning things and items and techniques in this class that can help you to break into networks, but we're going to be white hats. We're going to be the people who help secure the networks. And to do that, we have to think like our adversaries. We have to think like the black hats, like the people who want to break into Equifax and steal 143 million pieces of data on, like I said, that's half of the United States almost that they got information on. So be aware of that. I'm pretty sure you're having to sign an ethics agreement as part of the cybersecurity competition.
They will, yeah.
Yeah. Let's just go with my jail is bad, and that's as a general rule, hackers do not do well in jail. Let's put it that way. These icons are very important for you to learn because they are going to be on the labs that you do. They're going to be on any documentation you read on the internet. They're going to be everywhere that you look. These are going to be some of the most common icons that you see for different types of devices. Now, what is an intermediate device? That is a device that's in the network itself. Primarily what we're going to deal with will be routers, switches, and wireless access points. There'll be a little bit of wireless routers, but for the most part, those will be the ones that we deal with. Now, when we look at end devices, obviously laptops, printers, tablets, smartphones, etc., all of those. By the way, there's an entire cybersecurity field on smartphones and how to get information off of smartphones. And then media. Anytime you see this symbol, just a regular dark line, that is typically representing some type of unshielded twisted pair cabling. WAN media is some type of specialized serial cable in most cases, and this is wireless media. So that could be RF, or it could be microwave, or anything that is in the electromagnetic spectrum for wireless. Now, I want to show you this real quickly. You'll notice, and I know this is a little small, I apologize, my laptop has a real high resolution. But you'll notice device icons that are in our chapter are the device icons used inside of Packet Tracer. So you can see that the switch, PC, even cabling, when I go to start cabling things, you see this is a copper straight through, copper crossover, so on and so forth. So these icons are very important for you to learn and understand. We look at a network, we've got end devices, devices that data is created and usually sent to, so an end device. You have intermediary devices like the switch and routers that allow you to send things through. And then there are peripherals, and peripherals such as printers. Now we've got security as part of our networks. From a security standpoint, we look really at networks as two primary types, peer-to-peer and client-server. Honestly, peer-to-peer has very little security. It's a set of machines that you hook together and share resources among. Each machine is both a client and a server in most cases. There's no centralized administration. If you want to be secure, you really just don't use a peer-to-peer network. It still has its uses in some places. I mean, if you're going to hook up 3 computers at a small office and they don't need central storage, central file sharing, they don't need centralized security, that is an option. However, most of what we're going to do are client-server networks, and that gives us a network where there's a client or a server in the center, and then you've got clients that connect to those server resources, which is primarily what we're going to deal with. Now, I'm going to ping 192.168.254.254. Okay, and you will see I get replies. Ping sends out what is known as an ICMP echo request. Okay, let me pull this down here. So when I ping something, the command ping, not wing, ping, can't type today, it sends out an ICMP echo request to the target. So the command is always ping space target. Now what you're going to learn is this is one of our first ways to check for security on a network. We do ping sweeps, and those ping sweeps can tell us what hosts are live, and then that also can tell us the number of hosts on a network, and then we can start targeting where we want to do our actual investigations. But ping target, it sends out ICMP echo requests, and you'll notice that I get back echo replies. And so you get back ICMP echo replies. And in this case, I pinged an IP address. Now, I can also ping, and this may not work, but I'm going to try Google, and it probably won't because they block ping. That did work, okay? You'll notice that by pinging www.google.com, this is kind of neat because this will not actually work in my office because we block ICMP at our network boundary, but it's not being blocked here at the house. But pinging google.com translates to this 209.85.201.106 IP address, and then I get replies. Now what that tells me is that I should be able to actually go to www.google.com and have access, because at least I have what's called layer 3 access, so I can get there, and really I have DNS working too, so because I can actually ping a fully qualified domain name. But this command is very important. If you're not able to ping google.com, you may want to first ping your default gateway, because that's how you get out of your network, is the default gateway. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward in the class. But those commands, or that command, is a basic host is live and it is up and running. Any questions on ping command? Okay, I can also try this, traceroute www.google.com, and you're going to see now this is a command that will actually show me all the hops that I use to get to google.com. So you can see that my service provider is Windstream. Then I went to another Windstream router, and each one of these are routers. Now what I'm going to guess is it will probably stop somewhere out here. Okay, it goes to another Windstream router. And now I'm down in Atlanta, so I'm in an Atlanta Windstream router. So there's ATL. So I've gone to Atlanta router, some unknown router, we don't know where that's at. And then it's going on through. It actually looks like it's going to work, which is very interesting, very neat too. This is a command we can use to see where a communication stops. We can do what's called a trace route. And that utility will take you all the way to the opposite side, and then show you where the problem or where the communication stops. Now, this, for instance, you will see it's now timing out. That does not mean that I won't get there. It simply means that at that point, probably the service provider started blocking ICMP, because this particular command, traceroute, does use ICMP echo requests, and it uses a time to live of 1 and then increments it to 2, then the 3, and then the 4. And if you block ICMP, it will stop. Sorry, I touched my screen. It will stop the communication. So I'm going to hit Control-C to stop, because we can see it's going to time out. But we could see it went down through Atlanta, and then somewhere down in there, and I could do some lookups to see where these IP addresses are. It was then not allowed to send back ICMP echo replies. If it was working, and there's the real debate about that in networking, you know, people blocking ICMP, we understand why you do it, because it does help to stop some ICMP attacks, but it also makes it difficult to find out to do troubleshooting, because even though I can ping, you know, we proved I can ping google.com, so I can get there. If there was an error and I wasn't able to ping it, we couldn't use traceroute to really see where my ping is stopping or where I'm unable to get to the server. But a good command, especially inside your network, if you're allowing ICMP. I strongly suggest you, your students, it is, you need 1 switch and 2 PCs, or you've also got Packet Tracer. And all you have to do in order to build, I'm going to go ahead and delete these extra items that I put in here. I'm actually going to delete all this so we can get rid of everything. If you want to build this lab inside a Packet Tracer, all you have to do is go down here and click on Network Devices, click on Switches, and grab any switch. It really doesn't matter what. You then can go to End Devices, click on one PC, bring it out here, click on another PC, bring it out here, and then you go to our cables, and to connect a PC to a switch, we use a straight through cable. So we hit here, click on PC2, Fast Ethernet, connect it to the switch, Fast Ethernet, grab another cable, PC3, and click here and go 02. You'll notice it's amber. Right now it takes it about 50 seconds to come up. You'll eventually learn about spanning tree. It's the switch going through the spanning tree process. So let's wait till these 2 links go green. And then we will be able to actually go in PCs in your lab. Obviously, you can do this with real gear. If not, then we have the ability just to go in here, click on the PC, go to desktop, IP configuration, and you can put a static IP address on it. So 192.168. I'm just going to put 12.10 because I'm going to use my IP addresses. And then if you click in here, the subnet mask will fill in itself. That's PC2. We go to PC3, desktop, IP configuration, 192.168.12.11. So I put in 10 and 11. Now I can go to a command prompt, and what command would allow me to check what IP address is currently on this PC? Anybody? It's a Windows PC. Hint, I just showed it to you because I showed you my IP address. It'd be ipconfig. You'll see that I've got 192.168.12.11. I'm going to type ping 192.168.12.10. And now I'm pinging from PC3 over to IP2. That you can use. And you see you're doing ipconfig/all, and it shows you even the physical addresses, which is a MAC address, inside of the particular setup. Any questions about that? Mentors, if you have, if you've got real, that's under the student resources at the beginning of the class, they can download. As we move forward, there will also be labs that you can do inside of NetLabs. So. Chapter 1. Are there mentors, any questions? I know we're at 3:20. Teresa, what's our hard cutoff time for folks to get on buses and things? 4 o'clock, isn't it?
Yeah. And
okay.
Mentors, you can let me know if that's not accurate at your location.
Okay. Well, let's move forward then. If there are no questions, let's jump forward to chapter 2. And like I said, you can just watch this on the YouTube, but I want to talk a little bit about different things that are going on. It's more like 3:55. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll be done before then. We're going to go for about another 20 minutes, and we'll call it a day. But these little things right here have opened up a whole new world of problems and issues for us. Phones are now used for everything. You know, we bank on them. We send Instagram. We Facebook. We do way too much on them. But the problem is phones weren't necessarily built with security in mind. The other thing is we don't really think about how they're tracking every single thing you do. If you want to see something scary and you have an Android phone and have location turned on, go into Google Services and look under your location information and just look at how specific it is in terms of how it is tracking where you're at and what you've done. It's really scary. It's useful at times. You know, we just had an example of, I actually read an example of a runaway who was found because of the ping from the phone, and thank goodness they were, because they were being tricked into to a situation that was very bad. But they texted or pinged their father with a text message, and then they were able to track that phone, which was very important. But sending data over cell networks, you get a chance, read a little bit about 5G. 4G LTE is out there, but now they're talking about 5G and how 5G is going to be the next big thing, and it's going to roll out quicker. In fact, if I had thought about it, it's kind of nuts, but I should have turned the hotspot on my phone and used my phone for my internet connection, and I actually have a faster internet connection through my phone at my house than I do through my land-based line that I have with my DSL connection. How many of you have heard of a POS system, point of sale system? A lot of these new point of sale systems have gone to NFC, where you can pay from the phone. It's one of the things now too, we're finally catching up with Europe. In Europe, almost all credit cards had a chip, and have had one for a couple of years, and we're just now getting now where we have to use chip-based communications. Or chip-based transactions. So at work. Of course, we have hosts, we have peripherals, and that's, you know, webcams, scanners, printers, those types of things, local or network. We have networking devices such as our switches and routers, and then our media, which is Ethernet is one of the common local area network technologies. In fact, you're connected to an Ethernet connection right now, be it a wireless Ethernet or a wired Ethernet connection. And it was originally created by, it's called DECnet, and it was developed by Digital Equipment Corporation, Intel, and Xerox. And it has a standard of 802.3, which down the road you will probably want to commit to memory because 802.3 standards are fairly important. You move forward. One of the things I just showed you in the lab was how to put an IP address onto a device. It's dependent upon the operating system. You know, in Linux, you've got to go in and add it into a text file. And Windows, put it into a GUI. You can also do it in the GUI on Linux. You don't have to do it in the text file, but you can do it in the networking information for Linux. But you'll notice that you must have some type of address. This is just like a telephone number. In this case, this is IPv4. So IPv4 we'll talk a great deal about as we move forward. But IPv4 allows you to put an IP address, a unique IP address, on your device, and then you can communicate using tools such as, again, ping to test, traceroute to test, and then it also is the basis for everything you do on the internet. IPv4 allows you to open up web browsers. That allows you to access Instagram, Facebook, all your applications. They all run on top of IP version 4 right now. When we go to configure an IP address on a device, you can do it one of two ways. One is manual, and so you can actually go in and manually assign an IP instead of networking. So I can go into my PC, and I'm not going down because it would knock me off. But right now, you will see that on my IPv4, I'm set to obtain an IP address automatically. So when my PC connects to my home network, I grab an IP address. I could put a static IP address on this PC by assigning an IP address, a subnet mask, and then a default gateway. And we know the default gateway I showed you earlier was that 254, 192.168.254. DNS, you would also, if you wanted to statically assign DNS, one of the things you'll learn as you move through your networking career, many times when I'm trying to troubleshoot DNS issues, I change the DNS to Google's DNS server of 8888 to kind of test that out. But right now, I use automatic because it's easier for me as I move my machine around between work and home and other places. I can just dynamically grab an IP address. Now, that's not as secure because when you go and sit down in Starbucks and you turn on the Wi-Fi on your phone and you connect to their Wi-Fi network, there are ways for people to place a man-in-the-middle attack. In other words, they put a fake access point in that Starbucks, and you connect, and you think you get an IP address from the Starbucks system, but you're actually getting an IP address from someone's laptop, the person sitting over in the corner. And then they're routing all of your traffic through their PC before they send it to the Starbucks access point. So dynamic IP can have some issues with it. Manual IP, however, in that case is not really an option because you don't know what IP addresses are being used in that Starbucks. I haven't said that, you could scan it and find them, but that is not something that we normally do. This dynamic IP configuration uses a protocol called DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. We'll talk more about it as we continue to move forward. Now, this is meant for classroom. Even if the computer is fairly locked down, you should be able to do this particular lab where you can actually go in and look at the wireless or the IP address on the machine. If you do have some wireless routers in your lab, you can set up a small network and have them do it separate from the school network. So you can actually go through and look at all the different determining the IP addresses. I would greatly suggest the mentors that you run through that at your cyber club meeting. Naming, I'm not going to go over other than that we do name our computers with some type of conventional naming system inside our networks. I'm going to move through this real quick because we've already talked about it. Talk about copper media versus fiber optic versus wireless. To begin with, let's talk about copper. Now, the reason we use copper cabling is because copper transfers electrons easily. In other words, electrons move through copper easily. They move easy through water too, so it's one of the things we have to be careful as humans that we don't electrocute ourselves because we're just big bags of water. But copper is a very important type of cabling for a couple reasons. One is most modern networks today use twisted pair cabling, and this is unshielded twisted pair cabling in the left-hand corner here. You'll see it's 4 pairs or 8 wires. It's white, orange, orange, white, green, green, white, blue, blue, and white, brown, brown. And that's because there's a solid color and then a color that's traced with a white and then the solid color. You also notice, even though it's a little hard to see here, but you'll notice that with the twist on each one of these cables, there's a different rate of twist. That's to help with a term called crosstalk to keep signals from interfering across these wires. But twisted pair cabling is our most common form, unshielded twisted pair. Coaxial cable is the type of cable we use for, right now the biggest use is, satellite TV in our homes. I have 3,500 square feet of twisted pair cabling in my house and 1,500 feet, not square feet, but 3,500 feet of twisted pair, and I have 1,500 feet of coaxial. If I could ever actually get a fast internet connection to my house, I've got all the wiring in the house to plug everything in. So unfortunately right now I just can't. But we use this mainly with, you can see it when it comes in for Time Warner cable, those types of things, or what Spectrum now, whatever happens to be this week, or whatever cable is. And then fiber optic cable is really the top end of cabling. And it is the cable that is the hardest, absolute hardest to tap. It is the most resistant to what we call EMI, which, by the way, EMI, or electromagnetic interference, will have a detrimental effect on twisted pair cabling because it will bleed into twisted pair cabling, the signal will. So electromagnetic interference such as that caused by large motors, large electrical sources, nuclear weapons, they cause great amounts of EMI. Not that anybody's worried about the cable working after a nuclear bomb goes off, but EMI, there have been some experiments with EMI pulse weapons to knock out electronics. And so there's some thoughts about how you have to shield an infrastructure against that. Coaxial cable, because of its shielding, is a little more resistant to EMI, but still you can lay coaxial cable again in a sniffer and pull electrical signals off of it. But fiber optic cable, because the core is a glass and there's just nothing more than light pulses going through, it is very difficult to tap. Hold on one second. Sorry, folks, there's no way to mute my home phone, telemarketers. So fiber optic cable is your best if you really want security, or if you need to run a cable anywhere that there's EMI or the possibility of electrical discharges, because it's totally resistant. Here again, we've got twisted pair cabling showing what can happen when EMI does interfere with the signal, crosstalk, and that's when the cables are bundled together. And so you have to be careful. One of the things I did in my basement is I had a large bundle of unshielded twisted pair that had to go across the power lead that come into my house. What I did is I crossed it at a 90-degree angle with those unshielded twisted pair cables to make sure that it would cause the least amount of signal interference because they would be out of phase with one another. All right. Just jump real quick, unshielded twisted pair, and you'll see it here. You can't even still, even though the cut that's very short, you can see the different rate of twist. in a single shield, or normally shields each pair in its own shielding. And then there's an entire chart about different types of cabling, Cat 3 through Cat 7. So it depends on what you're trying to do with it and what speeds you want it to be able to handle. And then you've got the connectors that are common with twisted pair. And the most common for networking is an RJ45, which is on the right. The RJ11 is the old phone connections that we've seen. And you actually can do phone connections now with RJ45s. That's what I have in my house. I use RJ45 connections. This is known as a BNC. They consider this a bayonet connector, and you push it on and twist it. You also have F-series connectors, and F-series connectors are the ones that you put onto your satellite cables. You plug it in and you screw it in. So that is a type of cabling here that is coaxial. So it's got a single braided or stranded conductor in the middle. And it's almost always made out of copper, and they say or aluminum, but it's normally copper. And then fiber optic, this is expensive and hardest to install, but it's also the most future-proof because we really haven't even figured out what the true bandwidth is on it, because it's all dependent upon what we've got on each side. But typically it's got a PVC jacket, it's got some type of strengthening material, which is Kevlar in many cases, to keep the cable from being broken as you pull it. There's a buffer, a cladding, which is a slightly different chemical in the core to help the light bounce back into the core. And then you have a core, and that core is made out of glass. And there's two different types of fiber you will learn about. We're going to learn about two different types of fiber optic cable, and that is multimode, which we used to talk about being using LED light sources, but it doesn't anymore, and single mode. And the best thing to remember about this is multi-mode is usually used inside the data center for short jumps or shorter runs. Single mode is for long haul applications. So you send it 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers, something of that nature, then you would use a single mode piece of fiber. Doesn't mean you can't use it inside the data center, but a lot of times it's overkill to use single mode, jumper between two devices that are 6 feet apart from each other. You may still use a cable, even in that instance, a multi-mode connection, because you can do faster speeds and you're kind of future-proofing yourself in that you can use up to 100 gigabits. It does matter. There are cabling standards, 568A, which is 1 and 2, and 3 and 6, excuse me, 1 and 2, 3 and 6 being reversed between 568A and B. These are cabling standards, and you really need to determine and decide upon what will be your cabling standard. You also need to realize that when you're sending data on a UTP cable, you typically have a send to a receive. So 1 and 2 is send, and 3 and 6 are receive. And so you transmit on 1 and 2, and you receive on 3 and 6. On one end, and the opposite side, you'll do the opposite. Depending on how it's been, build a cable. Have them actually go in and build cables. We're not going to, because it's we do buy a lot of our cables, but build that cable is a nice thing to do. And this 3 and 4. I want to ask you real quickly, are there any questions? Any questions at all before we move forward? Remember, folks, I have dates on the quizzes. So quizzes for Chapter 1 and 2 are available. Students, you simply log into netacad.com. You go to, let me return to the class. There's the easiest way for you to get access to any of our assignments is to go into the course, and then you will see the chapter quiz. You can click on it, and you will notice that I have made it to where there's multiple. I keep the highest. You can do it as many times as you want, and it is available, but I do have it due on the 12th. This is where you can read the chapters. If you have any issues, obviously, mentors, please send me your information and anything you need, and I will do my best to answer it, and we will continue to move forward. So I'm going to stop the recording.